The stagecoach hadn't even stopped rocking when Peter Zayn felt his heart jump in his chest. The wind tore across the Cheyenne stage depot like it wanted to rip the world apart, but that wasn't what made his breath catch. It was the woman stepping down from the coach with nothing but 2 worn carpet bags and a look in her eyes that told him she had already survived more than most people ever would. He had paid $5 for a bride. 5 real, hard-earned dollars scraped together through 2 bitter winters, one that took his wife and another that nearly took his farm. He thought he knew exactly what he was buying. A stranger, a helper, someone to keep the house warm while he fought to keep the land alive. But the moment she looked his way, he realized he didn't know anything at all. "You, Peter Zayn?" she asked. He nodded. "I am." "You must be Geneva." "Geneva Vaughn," she said, her voice steady even though her hands were tight at her sides. He reached for her bags. She let him take them without a word, and they walked to his wagon through the cutting wind. Peter expected awkwardness. He expected her to shrink into herself or look away. But Geneva climbed up beside him with a dignity he couldn't explain. She didn't hide from the cold. She didn't tremble. She only asked, "How far to your farm?" "About an hour west," he said. "Then we best get going." Lights falling fast. As they rode, Peter found himself speaking more than he meant to. Her quiet questions opened something in him. He told her about the drought, the cattle he'd buried, the bank letters he'd stopped reading, the wife he'd lost 2 years before. He didn't know why he told her these things. Maybe it was the way she listened without judging. Maybe it was because he hadn't spoken honestly in so long. When they reached the small cabin and barn tucked into the Wyoming hills, he helped her down. "I have a spare room," he said. "You can stay there until we figure things out." "You paid $5 for a wife," she said plainly, "not a house guest." He swallowed. "I didn't mean it like—" "I know," she said softly, "but I agreed to marry, so let's marry." Quote, "And so they did." Reverend Mallory came the next morning. It took 10 minutes. No guests, no celebration, just 2 hands clasped together, and 2 lonely people trying to start a life they didn't fully understand yet. After the Reverend left, Geneva rolled up her sleeves and asked where he kept the flour. She cooked cornbread and beans. She worked like someone who had been working her whole life. When she spoke again, it was quiet, almost careful. "I am not looking to replace anyone." "I know you lost someone." "Her name was Clara," Peter said. "I am not Clara," Geneva answered, "but I do not give up easy." The days settled into a rhythm. A cold wind blew across the plains, but inside their small home, something warmer began to take shape. Geneva woke early, worked hard, and never complained. She mended the roof with him, helped birth a calf, chased a coyote away with nothing but a rifle and grit. But sometimes, late at night, Peter heard her crying behind her bedroom door. He never asked why. Then came the boy. Peter found him near the north pasture, barefoot and holding the hand of a smaller girl. The boy looked about 8, the girl maybe 5, their clothes torn, their faces hollow. "Where are your folks?" Peter asked. The boy lifted his chin. "Gone." He brought them inside. Geneva wrapped the girl in a quilt, fed them warm soup, and rubbed their hands until color returned. Later, the boy spoke. "My name's Henry. This is Hope. Ma died 3 weeks ago. Pa left last summer. We were trying to get to Casper. Hope got tired. Then we saw your barn." Peter looked at Geneva. Her eyes softened. "They can stay," she said. No hesitation, no doubt. That night, Geneva tucked Hope into the small bed she herself cried in. Then she sat by the fire beside Peter. "I was not abandoned," she said quietly. "I left. My father drank. My mother begged me to run before he sold me off, so I ran." Peter didn't say a word. He simply took her hand, and she didn't pull away. From that night on, something shifted in the house. Geneva cooked for 4 instead of 2. Peter taught Henry how to feed the animals. Hope sat in Geneva's lap while she sewed patches onto her torn dress. The silence in the cabin changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like hope had roots now, like it was settling into the floorboards. One evening, Geneva leaned her head against Peter's shoulder. He didn't move away. Her hand found his, and he closed his fingers around hers without thinking. Outside, the Wyoming wind softened. Inside, something began to grow between them, as fragile as new spring grass and just as stubborn. For the first time in years, Peter Zayn felt the quiet wasn't hurting him anymore. It was healing him. The frost melted fast that April, and with it came long days filled with work that couldn't wait. Peter hitched the mule at first light, but Geneva was already outside, braiding Hope's hair into 2 uneven plaits. Henry stood nearby with a feed bucket held stiff in both hands, waiting to be told what to do. "I'll take the south field with the boy," Geneva said. "You need the north side turned first." Peter nodded. "North's ready." Quote. She didn't look back as she led Henry down the slope toward the creek. The boy walked quiet, but he followed her steps like he trusted her more than the ground under him. Hope stayed by the porch, hugging the rag doll Geneva had sewn for her out of scraps. By noon, the sun was hot enough to sting. Peter leaned into the plow as the mule steadied the rows. Every few minutes he found himself glancing toward the far field, wondering how Geneva and Henry were doing. He didn't see them again until dusk. They returned, covered in dust and mud. Henry's shirt was stained, but his chin was lifted with a shy pride. Geneva took the basin of water. Peter set out and washed her hands without a word, then passed it to the boy. That night at supper, the 4 of them sat around the table. The only sound was the clink of spoons against bowls until Henry spoke softly. "I helped her dig a whole row today." Peter nodded. "You did good." Geneva didn't smile, but her eyes said she agreed. After supper, Peter walked the fence line with a lantern. The wind pushed against him, but he needed the quiet. Needed space to understand the strange, warm pull he felt whenever Geneva's eyes met his. He was checking the corner post when he heard her boots in the grass. "You always work this late?" she asked. "Land don't care what time it is." She stood beside him in the lantern glow, arms crossed against the cold. They didn't look at each other, but something steady beat between their breaths. "We can trade days," she said. "One of us works the field. One stays near the kids." "You think they'll stay long?" he asked. "They don't have anywhere else," she said. He nodded. The truth of it sat heavy in his chest, but it felt right. Then she asked, "Did you love her?" He knew who she meant. "Clara." "Yeah," he said. "I did." "You miss her every day?" He hesitated, eyes on the fence rail. Not every day anymore. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They walked back with only inches between them. And when her shoulder brushed his, neither stepped away. The next morning he found her standing in the yard, sleeves rolled, face turned to the early sun Henry chopped kindling. Hope drew shapes in the dirt. For a moment, Peter let himself imagine this wasn't temporary, that none of this would disappear the way life had taken Clara from him. Later that week, Geneva returned from town, with a hen tucked against her side and a folded letter hidden in her waistband. She handed Peter the hen, but held the letter tight. When she opened it inside, she didn't speak. She simply folded the paper and fed it to the stove flames. "Something you want to tell me?" he asked quietly. "No," she said. "Not anymore." That night she stood on the porch with her arms folded, staring at the dark fields. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't turn. "That letter was from someone who thought they still had a say in my life." "And?" Peter asked. "I didn't answer," she said. He nodded. "Good." She looked at him then, something raw and new in her eyes. "You ever think about leaving?" "Used to," he said, "but I'm glad I stayed." The quiet stretched between them. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, just full. The next morning she handed him a packet of sunflower seeds. "For the porch," she said. "Hope likes watching bees." He dug the soil with his hands. She pressed each seed into the earth. They worked slow and close, their hands brushing in the dirt. When they finished, she looked up at him with something that made his heart beat harder than work ever could. She came here to stay, he realized. Not just for shelter. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because something here felt like home. June brought storms. One night, the barn roof leaked hard, and he ran out to fix it. Geneva was already there, standing on a stool with canvas in her hands. "You'll fall," he warned. "Then catch me," she said. He did catch her, not because she slipped, but because when she climbed down, she didn't step away. His hands were at her waist, hers at his shoulders. Neither spoke, but everything was said in the quiet. After that, the space between them felt changed. Not rushed, not forced, just waiting. Then her brother came. A man rode in on a dusty horse, rifle slung across his back. When he dismounted, his eyes went straight to Geneva. "Looking for a woman," he said. "Goes by Geneva Vaughn." Geneva stepped forward. "Thomas." "You got my letter," he said. "I burned it." He nodded. "Ma died. Pa's gone. I didn't come for trouble, just work." Geneva looked at Peter. Peter looked at her. "Your call," he said. She swallowed. "You can stay 2 days. Then keep going." Thomas slept on the porch. He ate alone. He worked with Peter, but didn't speak much. On the second night he left, leaving a folded note that Geneva burned without opening. "I'm done carrying their weight," she said. Peter stood beside her as the flames took it. The next Sunday they walked to the small grave where Clara rested. Geneva placed a marigold beside the stone. Peter placed his hand over hers. She looked at him, her eyes soft but steady. "I want this life to be mine. Not borrowed, not bought, chosen." He squeezed her hand. "Then choose it." "I already did," she said. He pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist. She didn't tremble. She fit against him like she had been meant to be there all along. That night they didn't sleep in separate beds. And for the first time since Clara died, Peter didn't feel haunted by the past. He felt pulled toward the future. Summer rose slow that year, warm and bright, the kind of days that made the whole valley smell like new earth. The barley grew tall and green. Hope painted with crushed flowers on scraps of old muslin. Henry learned how to mend saddle straps and sharpen tools. And Geneva moved through the cabin with a softer, steadier grace than Peter had ever seen in anyone. But everything changed the day she sat on the porch steps, shelling peas, and said it out loud. "I'm late." Peter froze halfway across the porch, the cradle he'd been carving resting against his knee. He didn't touch her, didn't reach. He just looked at her face, calm, scared, brave all at once. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I think so. It's early." He knelt beside her. Nothing in him felt like fear, only a strange, overwhelming warmth. "We'll take care of it," he said. "All of it." Her hands relaxed. She breathed again. "I know." Quote. From then on, everything changed, but nothing did. They still tended the land, still cooked meals, still watched the children grow, but Peter moved closer to her now, walked slower beside her, kept an arm ready when she climbed the porch steps. Geneva didn't ask for help, but she didn't refuse it either. By midsummer, her belly rounded gently beneath her dress. She laughed more, ate more, slept curled against Peter's side with her hand tucked beneath his. The kids changed too. Henry took on the heavy chores without a word. Hope began placing little wildflowers on the windowsill every morning. The house felt fuller, warmer, like it was breathing with them. One evening, Peter found Geneva resting against the bean trellis, her face lifted to the sun. "You all right standing?" he asked. "Just tired," she murmured, "but it's a good tired." He helped her sit in the shade and finished the picking himself. When he brought her the full basket, she looked at him the way the earth must look at the rain, quiet, grateful, knowing it was safe to bloom. Later that night, when the children slept, he handed her a folded paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Look." She opened it carefully, and her breath caught. Her name was printed there beside his. The deed. "I asked the Reverend to file it last time I was in town," he said. "Farm's yours, same as mine." She folded the paper slowly, like it was something holy. "We'll keep it safe," she whispered. By harvest, the barley stood waist high. golden and proud. Geneva moved slower now, holding her belly with both hands when the baby kicked. Hope drew pictures for the new child. Henry carved a wooden horse. Peter built a second cradle. Then, one cold October night, it was time. Geneva gripped the bed frame, her breath sharp. Peter lit the fire, boiled water, and worked with steady hands, even as fear clawed at the edges of his chest. She didn't cry out. She didn't complain. She fought like she fought everything, with quiet strength. And then a thin, furious cry broke the air. A boy. Tiny, red-faced, squalling like the world had offended him. Peter held him only for a moment before laying him on Geneva's chest. Her hands curled around the baby, as if she had known him forever. Tears slid down her cheeks, soft and silent. "We'll call him Elias," she said. Winter arrived quick after that. Snow clung to trees. Wind pushed against the windows at night. But the little cabin stayed warm. Elias slept, tucked against Geneva. Henry split wood before dawn. Hope painted bright flowers onto the cradle beams. The days fell into rhythm. No hurry, no fear. Only life moving steady as the creek. One afternoon, Geneva stepped out of the cabin, with Elias wrapped tight in a quilt. Peter was stacking wood near the shed. She watched him a long moment, her expression soft as falling snow. "I used to think I'd always be alone," she said when she reached him. He leaned the axe aside. "You're not." "I need you to know something," she said. Her fingers tightened on the baby's blanket. "I didn't come here to be saved. I came because I was strong enough to start again. But what we have now, this is more than surviving. This is grace." Quote. Peter reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You gave me that too." She leaned her forehead against his chest. Elias slept between them, small and warm, a piece of both their pasts and all of their future. The years that followed settled into something peaceful, something whole. Henry grew tall and steady. Hope became an artist. Elias learned to run across the fields his parents brought back to life. One spring morning, Geneva and Peter stood on the rise above the barley field, fingers intertwined, hearts quiet and full. "We did it," Geneva whispered. Peter kissed her temple. "We're still doing it." She smiled, eyes warm as morning sun. "You're the first place I ever belonged." "And you," he said, "are the only home I ever needed." Hand in hand, they looked out over the land they had saved together, the farm alive with wind and promise. Their children laughed in the yard below. The sky stretched wide over Wyoming. And for the rest of their days, they woke each morning grateful for the life they had built. One that had started with $5, a stagecoach, and two broken souls choosing each other.